Hello everyone, I believe I should be live right now. So welcome everyone to the webinar organized by Google together with Super Angel on free Google tools that hopefully will help you get a few more insights when it comes to the digital world and also help you with activity planning. So today's session is dedicated to these tools. Hopefully, and I believe that some of them should be new to you, so those are not new products developed by Google. Rather, those are the tools that we usually would recommend startups, especially those that are starting off, to utilize for free just to complement their business decision making and marketing activities with a few more data points. So briefly about the agenda today. At first we'll look into the introduction, so into Google tools, so why and how they should be used, what kind of data they collect and how we do that. And then we'll dive into 4 different themes for these tools. So one will be tools for exploring, the second theme is tools for getting the inspiration, the third theme is tools for expansion and campaign expansion as well, and finally the fourth, but definitely not the least, is tools for additional knowledge. So we do have limited time today, but we do have a couple of other tools that will hopefully give you additional trainings to look up on your own time and convenience, just to make sure that you are able to develop further individually. And finally, in case we have still time, we'll go through a Q&A as well. And just very briefly about myself, so my name is and I was told that the slides are not visible. Let me change that as well. That should be visible right now. So my name is Justas. I've been with Google for over 5 years now. I started off in Dublin, where I worked across multiple teams, primarily with a product and a bit more technical kind of role. And now it's been already 2 years, actually today, since I'm back and working in our Vilnius office as a senior analytical consultant, working with the largest companies and advertisers in the Baltics. So let's not wait more and dive into the presentation. So firstly, and probably most importantly, why exactly should we use the insight and planning tools that come from Google? I believe that the key power and value of them lie within 3 factors. One is real intention that we're able to capture. The second one is definitely scale. And third is real time, in case that's the type of data and insight that you actually need. So I'll go through these in a bit more detail just to explain what we mean. So the real intention primarily comes from the factor that a lot of Google products are driven by search. And search, at least in my opinion, is probably one of the most powerful tools for advertising as well, just because it is able to capture the intent behind a person. Because when people search, they give away the meaning or the intention of their actual query. For example, if I'm interested in buying, I don't know, some sort of sport shoes, and if I search for that, that's already a clear indication to providers of different products that that's exactly my intent, to potentially understand the price or maybe look to buy them. If my search query is, for example, Nike shoes, where to buy or something like that. And I believe that other tools of marketing sometimes lack this intent piece, because they are driven by different set of signals, and that's where kind of search does have intent behind the declaration. So that's the first and kind of foremost power of Google tools that we have that are driven by search engines. And I'm told that there might be some. Let me know if you can hear me well as well in the comments section. I'm not sure what that could be. Give me one moment and I'll try to get my my headphones, because maybe that will fix this. So sorry about this. I hope I don't lose the sound. In the meantime, feel free to ask questions uh, or tell you what you think about the content. Okay, I'm getting that everything's fine as well. So let me know in the comments because I'm able to monitor them as well. So I'll keep notice of that. Cool. So it's mixed opinions. All good. If it becomes unbearable, let me know because I'm afraid that if I plug. Okay, so I see the headphones should help. Let me do this. Is it a bit better right now? Can I get a quick comment if that's better? Okay, let me continue because I believe this should be. Let me just quickly check if this is capturing my headphone jack right now. Yeah, that should be the case. Cool. Sure, if there are some other technical glitches, definitely let me know. So the first case why Google data is useful is the intent behind it. The second one is the scale of data. So right now Google has 9 platforms with more than 1 billion users that are actively using those products every month. Those will be Google Search, Maps, Gmail, Android, YouTube Play, Google Chrome, and a few kind of, I don't want to say newcomers, but the most recent additions, which are Drive and Photos. We might not necessarily use the data from all of them, but the fact that some of these tools work together means that you do have, and we are able to capture some of those repeated signals across multiple platforms and just make sure that all of those are used when providing the insights in these tools again. So for example, here we have just one journey to purchase of a given person. They would use different platforms throughout the whole course of the journey. For example, they might be searching for something on Google search, then watching some videos on YouTube, and the fact that all of these in a privacy compliant way can be, not all of this, but since a lot of activity can be blended together, means that we're able to come up with different types of models for estimating user behavior and again providing data on that. So the scale of data is also very important, and that's what we base a lot of our tools on. And finally, the third tool is aggregate data that's available in real time. So most of this tool that we'll look through are self-service and available at any time for anyone. You don't need to pay for them. In some cases, you might need to have a Google account, which probably most of you do. And we are providing in some of those tools fresh and real-time data. One important thing to understand is that we are really taking care of the privacy. So all of the data that is presented in all of Google tools, including Google Analytics that we'll not cover today, is usually aggregated so that you wouldn't be able to point out individual user behavior, and that the data and the privacy is all the time compliant. And again, in some cases, depending on local legislation, we do apply some extra restrictions to different products depending on in which country a user is based, and that's clear with, for example, GDPR that Google is also compliant with. That it applies to certain countries and regions as well, and that's how we customize this for our products too. So 3 key themes why these tools are helpful and where the data is coming from. But the most important thing here, and this is actually a piece of information that you'll need to do yourself, so we're able to provide you with data, with different data points and metrics. And data without context is something, because it still gives you, something to base your decision on. But I believe, and this is actually what I try to do in my job as well, that coming up with insights that are based on data is much more crucial. And here I have an example. For example, we can tell that there was an increase in demand for a particular category of products, in this case men's clothing, of 30% in France between years of 2016 and 2018. we have this data point, but we don't exactly know what's causing that and what does that actually mean. So that's what data means. And with your own input of your first party data and also correlations between and work with different tools, you should be getting to that insight kind of piece yourself, where you can give some causalities and reasons why things are happening in one way or not, and not the other one. So that's the main difference between data and insight. So today we'll look at how we can gather the data through these tools, partially how we can make the insights with them, but also this insight segment still falls on you as marketers as well, just because the tools, there has to be much more context that usually is individual company based as well. But that's something to definitely keep in mind when working with different tools and with different points of data, that insights need to be developed. And today we'll look into kind of 4 categories of the tools. One is not listed here because and that is the kind of the knowledge piece, because it encompasses all of this that we see here. But basically we'll look into the tools for exploration, for understanding the market better, the brands and the consumers. Then we'll look at some of the tools that give some pieces of inspiration and how to get inspired with those tools. And finally, expansion. So the expansion tools, I believe that those will be known for people who use Google Ads or have used them on a daily basis. For those that might be newcomers, you might you might see some of those tools for the first time as well. There's also the 4th piece, which is crucial as well when it comes down to running campaigns and any marketing activity, which is measurement. But we already had one quite long session on that. So measurement we'll not touch upon, but as I mentioned, there will be the 4th pillar for knowledge, so getting additional inspiration and additional trainings at your own convenience. So let's start off with tools for exploration. So the first one, which might be known, and I'm aware that some of the marketers might be using this already, but I thought that I would give my own insight into what are the use cases of Google Trends. So for those who are not aware, Google Trends is a tool that provides marketers or anyone about how search interest for a particular keyword or a theme or a topic is developing. The data here is based on and by a sample of Google search data. Usually only a small fraction of searches is used, but the number of searches is usually quite huge, which means that the data is representable and quite accurate. And there are 2 types of trends data. One is real time, which comes from for searches from the last 7 days, and then there is non-real time data, which dates back to 2004 and is available up to 36 hours before the search as well. And just a quick intro, I myself, because I work as an analytical consultant for our team, we do have our own internal tools that are actually using the same source of data as Google Trends is. And my job myself is really 50-60% of working with this type of data. So a lot of the times, because Google Trends might look as a simple tool in the beginning, however, it depends a lot on the creativity and the way you can stretch the data through different dimensions. And I'll try to walk you through those possibilities here as well in a bit more detail. Before we go into that direction, I also want to make a little bit of introduction to some of the technical aspects. So when you're typing in the Google Trends interface a particular theme or topic, you usually can choose between 2. There's a term and a topic. So a term usually reflects, it works similarly as a keyword. So for example, if you type in banana in Google Trends, the results might include the word banana or other variations of that, for example, banana sandwich. And usually if you choose a term, it doesn't account for differences in languages. For example, if I search for something that is purely in Lithuanian and not an international word, it might give me 0 results in other markets if people don't search for that because it doesn't account for the translation. The second part of Google Trends is topics. So we have a system that categorizes different keywords into themes. For example, London could be a theme which includes different types of variations and all sorts of meanings with London. It can be just the word London. It can also include the word capital of the UK. It can include variations in different languages as well. So the topic is much more kind of broader. So that's something to have in mind, especially when doing your analysis, just to make sure that you're looking at the correct pieces of data. Secondly, I'm sorry that this is a bit heavy in terms of text, but Google Trends, depending on how you work with the data, sometimes, especially when done on a geo basis, provides you with proportionate interest. What does that mean? If I search, for example, for a term, let's say NBA, which is the basketball league in the US, if I search for the NBA and if I add two countries to compare this term in, let's say Lithuania and US, naturally you would think that US should be clearly showing much higher interest rates than Lithuania, just because there's a higher number of people in the US searching for this term, because Lithuania has 3 million citizens only. However, with Google Trends, when geo data is being compared, what we do, we'll look at relative interest in each geo. So in this case, if I search for MBA in the US, the system calculates this in the following way. It looks how many searches there are for the term MBA, and it looks how many searches there are overall, and what proportion MBA term takes off of the overall number of searches in the US. It does exactly the same for Lithuania as well. It looks at how many searches there are in Lithuania and how many for this specific term. And then together, when we're comparing those two markets, as we have here, if it's visible with Australia and UK for Fortnite, even though the countries differ in size, we look at proportionate interest on each country's level. So sometimes it could be the case that if something is really trending in Lithuania, whereas we might not have the most absolute searches, Lithuania might be peaking in terms of the results. So that's also something to have in mind, especially when making analysis, so that you don't come with incorrect conclusions. And finally, something to have in mind as well, I definitely, especially when we'll go through these use cases, I definitely recommend you to utilize those two options, because in my mind, Google Trends analysis is something that you do on a constant basis, not just once. Of course, there are cases when you need to do it only once. For example, analyzing, entering a market with a new product. That happens once. But if you're monitoring your brand performance, if you're monitoring your own category of products that you sell, then you'll be doing that on a constant basis. In this case, you can bookmark the URL that you have for your current analysis, and it will be, you'll be able to open it in the same way anytime. Or what you can do, you can also export the data into Google Sheets, for example, and then work with the raw data that we have here. I see one question, I'll jump in quickly. Is there a way to know the actual number of people searching for a term topic? Unfortunately, not, because we are indexing this data. So you'll always see 100 as the highest value, which means that this is the peak and everything else is proportionate to that. For example, if in reality there's 1 million of searches that was the highest in the analyzed period, that will be marked as 100. And if you see 50 somewhere, that would mean that it's 500,000 searches at that data point. If you want to understand the actual number of searches, again, there's no tool that will give you that, but you can have your own. It's a mix of different tools that could help you come up with closer numbers. For example, you could use Google Trends, and also maybe the keyword planner that we'll look into in the next tools, because that gives you estimates in terms of how many searches there could happen, and then through Google Trends data you could maybe manipulate and understand how this has been developing over time. So that could be one way to understand these. Again, they might not be accurate, but they can give you some sort of an estimation. So going through the themes, and I'll have 5 of them for Google Trends. The first one that probably most companies that use Google Trends on a constant basis would be doing is brand monitoring. So here I just added a few companies from Estonia and different search terms. So this is the difference between the topic. They include just the variations of, for example, TransferWise, TransferWise.com, and similar queries. And what we're able to see, we can choose a particular geolocation. In this case, it's Estonia. We can look at and change the time period analyzed. And we can also choose the property we're looking into this. So right now it's web search. There's also YouTube, I believe images and others as well, if that's of interest for you. And in this case, we see that some brands were known. For example, Skype was really being searched for up till 2019, whereas the interest has been declining. And then the other two companies, again, this is proportionate, but for example, Bolt really drove up in kind of mid 2019, potentially with rebranding because it was known by a different name. Plus, we see that at some point, potentially that was the Olympic Games as well, because Bolt is a search term, so it not necessarily relates to a startup. This shot up as well at that time because people in Estonia looked for it quite a lot. So clearly brand monitoring, entering your own brand, different versions of that, plus looking at competitors and how they are developing, that's a very clear use case that you should be doing on a continuous basis. The second one is seasonality and seasonal breakouts. So I added a super simple example here, but basically if you are in an industry and if you want to understand how the seasonality has been developing or changing, that's exactly the thing that you can use. So here we have yearly data for 3 countries for a term soup. Naturally, soup is a dish that rises up during the colder months, and we clearly see that in Australia, that is when we have summer here in the northern hemisphere, whereas it's a completely different kind of development for countries in Europe. And again, that's just a simple example for your own industry, because you can also just choose a topic of the industry where you operate in, tracking the seasonality and seeing how it changes, because that also happens from time to time, also makes sense. So again, this is something that you would probably not be running on a daily basis, but looking at how the interest is developing in your industry definitely makes sense to observe quite regularly. The third one is emerging new trends. So in case you want to expand with your product, in case you're looking for maybe to expand the business a completely different way, Google Trends can also help you develop those trends that users are kind of pushing and that users are demanding for. So in this case, we see that, and this is the data from 2004, that gluten-free was really not something that was on people's minds in the beginning, and suddenly, especially since 2010, it really started rising in some of the markets, not as much in UK, although over the time it kind of reached the levels of other countries, again on relative interest within the country. By the way, you'll see in some cases in Google Trends that there are some notes, so usually if the methodology for collecting the data changes, you'll be able to understand how something might have influenced what you see here. So again, emerging new trends and new products is something that Google Trends can definitely be used for. Fourthly, and this is something that is not that common, although I do see the value, especially when, and kind of going back to the question that was also asked, if determining how big a particular segment is. So looking at category ownership. Here I have 2 different terms. One is gluten-free and one is gluten-free bread. So naturally, the one that includes bread is much more, it's much more specific. And gluten-free term also would include the search queries that include the word bread as well. So this category includes this one, and when we combine both of them in the same graph for the given geo and country, we're able to understand how much a given segment contributes to the overall kind of industry. So if you operate, for example, if you have a business in in e-commerce, and if you want to understand how different segments, for example, if you're selling electronics and then TVs, potentially you could try come up with different topics or keywords to understand how much demand you could expect for everyone, and for instance, how much budget you should be assigning for the campaigns that target different categories within a given segment. Plus, again, doing market estimations also works in this way through category ownership. And finally, the one that I would expect some companies and startups to be utilizing is geo insights. So understanding how a particular product or different brands are trending across a given geo. So here I have just and kind of a proportion of interest for different types of retailers in Estonia. We have for most countries also the split in terms of different counties. What you can also do with geo insights, you can take a high region, for example, you can look globally or at Europe, where you'll see country splits. And that basically helps you understand two things. So firstly, if you're doing brand comparison, you can understand how your brand is doing against other brands, like we have in this case. So we see that, for example, Remy is really searched much more often in this particular county, and even much more in this one. So a very clear, potentially kind of brand leadership in a given geo. Plus, you can also, when doing geo insights, you can look into only one brand, and if you take into account a wider region, let's say Europe, or if you look globally, it also can pinpoint you to directions where the demand for a given product is much higher. To me, one striking example probably is Tesla, because if you run Google Trends analysis, you'll see that Norway usually spikes up. Again, it's based on proportionate interest, but overall, probably because of the infrastructure and general interest, Tesla would be one of the top, Norway would be one of the top regions for Tesla, and that kind of also reflects the per capita maybe ownership of the cars in a given region. So again, for geo insights, two types, so competitive analysis and at the same time demand analysis across different countries. So 5 key themes for using Google Trends, and I'll just repeat myself. I believe that Google Trends can become a daily tool for marketers just to be able to complement your different types of activities with additional pieces of information. So going to other exploration tools, and we'll spend much less time on those than we did on Google Trends, because I really wanted to dive in that, just because there are more use cases for that. So the second one is Google Suggest. What it does, so the reason for using that is to capture the current moment and what's ongoing in people's minds related to different themes or even products. So the way you do that, very simple. It's not even a tool. I would call it maybe a hack. Just open the incognito window and start typing one of the, I don't know, brands or products or something like that, and the suggestions that show up are usually based on the trending searches or the top searches, which gives you an insight on what people's behavior usually looks like. So of course there are tools where you can get in much more in depth for that, for example with Keyword Planner, but if you want to quickly double check what's trending right now, that can be definitely used. So in the example here we see that when you start typing how to, these are the different examples, again based on trending data that are given to the user. I mentioned that you need to use that in incognito window because if you're using that through your regular Google search engine, it might be affected by your individual preferences and the things that you search for. So just to get the unbiased kind of view, incognito window is recommended. The third tool, again, potentially known, but I really want to emphasize it because I've seen examples where startups use this very effectively. So Google Forms, it's part of the Google Suite. Basically, it's a tool to conduct different surveys on via Drive, Gmail, or just sharing the link to that. Several ways of utilizing it. Firstly, conducting surveys. Secondly, potentially utilizing as lead forms. And I've seen how some businesses in Lithuania recently employed this when they were launching new activities. So definitely a very quick tool to set up. Unfortunately, we don't have the ability to handle A/B randomized testing that some other survey platforms could do. But if you're looking for a free version just to collect some responses, that's definitely the tool to go for. The fourth tool for exploring, and this will be related to users themselves, is Google Ads Audience Insights. I'll briefly mention that it's possible to get similar insights through Google Analytics as well, because we are able to provide you with different audience information. For example, which audiences your current users that come to the website belong to. So that's also a case, but within Google Ads, there's a tool called Audience Manager, which basically allows you to find different audiences and make splits, for example, of your website users, of your marketing lists by other categories. So for instance, affinity categories. What are your visitors and clickers on ads? What do they like? What do they search for? Also in market categories, which show what are they currently looking to purchase. So what are they in market for? And they could be moved into in-market categories when they're searching for queries that include, the words buy, price, and stuff like that. Also different demographic splits like age groups, gender, geo areas, device types as well. So if you're looking to understand your user a bit better and explore that's also the tool. I mentioned that within Google Analytics, you also have a section that is called Audience, which also allows you to understand this better. So you can use both and potentially complement the use and use them interchangeably, basically. And finally, again, something that's a hack, not necessarily a separate tool, but it has been quite instrumental for my own work. So as marketers, especially if you're looking at expanding into other geos, or if you're running campaigns across different languages, translation is something that you do on a constant basis. You might be using some professional services, but sometimes, especially if you're in the need of launching the campaign quickly, I would assume that quite a few of you would would go to Google Translate as the option. What is available in Google Sheets is actually a Google Translate functionality, and I would see most use cases for keyword translation, where you can basically utilize the equal Google Translate function, where you need to define your source language, your output language, and the term that you're translating. And in this case, you're able to get this done very effectively. Sometimes with Google Translate, when you input multiple text, it might overlap with one or the other. So if you're looking for a structured way of doing that, definitely this functionality has been a time saver for myself, and I definitely recommend this as kind of a hack for making those in an efficient manner. So that's the final kind of hack with exploration. And now let's get into the tools for inspiration. I'm a bit conscious of time, so we have around 22 minutes. Hopefully we can leave a few for Q&A. So let's get going with the tools for inspiration. So the first one is basically a hub of inspiration. It's called thinkwithgoogle.com. It's basically a repository of all the tools, case studies, of market insights, industry knowledge, and so on in one place. You have a choice of choosing regional studies as well. For example, if you're interested only in what's happening in, for instance, CE region, that's the most granular that leads to our region as well. You can choose that, or you can look at global studies as well. But if you're looking for, again, case studies and ways and data points to get inspired, that's the main resource that you'll have. It's constantly and continuously updated. You're also able to find, and we have published quite a few success stories with Baltic customers as well. So definitely check out how some of the top clients, are doing, and what kind of campaigns they have run and what kind of results they achieved. It's also possible to subscribe to this, so in case you want to receive this on a continuous basis, definitely do that. The second tool for getting inspired, and that actually could also go into the exploration phase, is Google Alerts. So this is one of the tools that I believe might not be utilized that often, but it does bring tremendous value to marketers, I believe. I'm a user of this myself. What it basically does, you can choose by going to the link different topics or keywords that you want to receive email alerts on when information on the web shows up. For example, if you work for some sort of a company, you could put your brand name in there, and whenever the brand is mentioned somewhere online in legit sources, let's say, you can either get daily, weekly summaries or instant summaries whenever, instant emails that the brand is mentioned. Again, it's not necessarily the brand. If you're interested in some celebrity as well, you can do that. So any search query or topic works. As I mentioned, you can set the frequency of alerts. I added an asterisk saying that it's not available in all countries, but all Baltic countries are supported, so that works with our language, with our languages as well. And again, the way I would see this being used for, so definitely, tracking and for people who work in PR, seeing how, if there's anything urgent happening or something emerging, that's one thing. And secondly, for marketers as well, just to understand what's going on with the brand and where it's mentioned. Thirdly, even for customer support, that could be one cases, because if there's some sort of a comment or something like that pops up online, again, this would allow you to potentially react real time and locate those instances immediately. The fourth one the next one for getting the inspiration is YouTube Ads Leaderboard. It's updated continuously as well. Basically, it's a part within Think with Google that allows you on a monthly or quarterly basis to discover the video ads that were the most successful on YouTube, for example, that had the best engagement rates. So it works definitely as inspiration, because you can see what others are making that is so successful. There's also the saying that you should be stealing or copying with pride. I don't want to say stealing, but again, inspiration is something where brands can be sharing the best practices that work with them, and that's definitely a place for that. So, for example, one of the newest pages is Q2's top 10 most successful YouTube ads, again, based on different engagement rates. You can see, you can watch them, you can get a bit more information on who developed that, and a few more details on that. So definitely worth for those who are interested in video advertising. And the last one for inspiration is also YouTube Rich Media Gallery. It's somewhat similar to the one that we looked at, whereas it's a bit more based on display advertising, so you can see the most innovative formats that are used by real clients in advertising. You can see how the different ads actually fall into the content of different pages as well, if it's, for example, a banner. And again, you have a few more extra details that potentially get you, help you to get some inspiration and see how you could replicate parts of someone kind of else's ideas, just to see if that can be successful for yourself as well. So find formats that basically match your creative ideas. Plus, in case you're new to display advertising, you'll find in the formats field a complete list of different formats with different specifications. So something that's very tangible and hands-on, I would say. So that's with inspiration tools. The third one is tools for expansion. And as I mentioned, if you're accustomed to Google Ads, you might be aware of those tools. But if you're starting off or haven't used Google Ads before, probably that's something that is, again, makes sense to explore just to get additional pieces of data. So the first one is Keyword Planner. You can find it within Google Ads. What it basically does, it gives you a chance to understand the volumes of different search queries or topics. You can also get keyword suggestions that you could implement. Plus, you see additional pieces of information, for example, competitive metrics in terms of how the competition looks like, what what CPCs you could expect, although that depends on individual case. So I would take, because it is aggregated and kind of averaged out, I would take this with a pinch of salt, but it's a good indication on what to expect. And Keyword Planner is also good for actually planning the budgets, campaigns, the potential reach, and the number of clicks that you could get based on those indicative monthly searches as well. So definitely good to use for coming up with new campaigns or expanding them in case you need more traffic, or if you want to expand into different products. The second one for expansion is called Market Finder. It's for those customers who are export driven and export oriented. The tool basically helps you to identify export opportunities in different markets just by entering your website and choosing the categories of the products that you sell. This tool utilizes multiple pieces of data, both Google and third party, and I'll have one more slide that outlines that. So basically it's a kind of full stack indication. Again, I would use it for initial research only, because naturally if you want to export you have to do other checks. But if you really want to go abroad and don't want to just stay with your domestic country, that could be one of the first go-to tools, just to understand what are the options and what you could expect abroad. The tool does three things. So finding new opportunities based on those data points, so getting those insights for your products. Secondly, helping you to plan operations as well. So we have information, in some cases it's very specific to your industry, in some cases it might be a bit broader, but we have info on operation as well. So what happens with localization, if you need localization, what information we have about different payments on a given country, logistics, and other types of operational stuff. And finally, it also gives you insights into marketing the business, so indication of different ad metrics, and basically what works and what should be considered when advertising the product abroad as well. Basically, it's a very simple process. We'll not go through that because you just need to enter a particular website, as I mentioned, and it's kind of a very automated flow. And finally, you're able to get full insights with different scorecards for given country, which again contain loads of different information about the country, from kind of competitive metrics, for example, recommended bids, to country profiles in terms of the languages that are spoken, geo breakdown for the population, so for instance for demographics, and some other economic factors as well, because that's also something to consider when expanding, if the product fits the market in terms of pricing and other attributes, plus online profile details and other stuff. So really quite in-depth insights on every given country. Plus, what you need to do is you can choose what's actually important for you as well. If it's just the ad metrics, for example, if you just want to drive cheaper traffic and you don't care about other factors, you can prioritize based on this type of metric. If it's, for example, if you have a product that is a bit more niche and maybe you need people with higher disposable income, that's also the data that's there that you can prioritize based on. If you want to add, it's a very good question. by someone if I want to advertise in a different country, if you need to use keywords in their language or English is enough. It really depends on the country and your capabilities of providing the translations of different assets that you have. It depends on the industry as well. Some industries, and sorry that this is not a very direct answer, but really it depends on a case-by-case basis. Working with our customers, we realize that some markets, for example, don't, even if the product seems to be very kind of English driven, it still makes sense to localize just because the market perceives it that way. For instance, French, German markets, again, it might be very different on the industry, but I've seen where the campaign doesn't work as well as it does locally. I've seen cases where only English works as well. It also depends on what's the proportion of the people that you want to reach, because if you have limited budgets, naturally English queries will bring you as well the traffic of people who search for that. So technically, if you just have English keywords, you'll reach the people who search in that language, so you can assume that English could work for them. So in case you're limited and in case you want to reach just let's say percent of the population in a given country, English can also work. Plus it's usually the easiest way to expand, and sometimes how companies do, they could start off with English and then over time, if they see traction, they could try to localize and move to a bit more local campaigns, local landing pages and stuff like that. So not a very straightforward answer, but really depends. But of course, English is usually the starting point in most, it could be in most countries. So that's with the Google Market Finder. The next one for expansion, and I would say optimization as well, is Test My Site. If you've attended our events, different events or other webinars, probably that's the tool that you might have seen. But nevertheless, it's still an important tool just because the mobile queries are, they have exceeded what people search on desktop. So mobile is super important it's super important for marketers to have a website on the mobile that loads quickly, because based on the research that was done, more than half of visitors will leave the website if it takes more than 3 seconds to load. So what this tool does, you simply enter your domain, the system analyzes it through different parameters, it looks at your website through a mobile network as well, and it gives you very precise recommendations on what should be adjusted in your website to make it load faster, which is crucial, as I mentioned, because if your website is not fast enough, you'll be losing traffic. So you might be doing an amazing job with your marketing activities, but people will not visit your website. So Test My Site, just enter your website. If you want to look for inspiration, it doesn't necessarily need to be your own domain as well, because you can, plus whenever you do this report, you'll get the competitive insight on where you land in your given field, so you can benchmark yourself against competitors and see how you're doing in this regard as well. And finally, also related to mobile, and this might be newer to most people, we have a website called Win on Mobile. It's a 14-part video and infographic course for all things mobile, starting with the importance of mobile is important, mobile speed and the basics of what determine that, but also going into things like conversion rate optimization, mobile UX, app UX, and stuff like that. So if you have mobile assets, definitely check it out. It will not be customized to you, but it gives the key principles for how to succeed on mobile. And finally, I think this is the last or the second last tool for expansion, but to me this was also quite new. It is limited, yet I hope that they expand this. Basically, this tool is called Data GIF Maker. What you can do, you can visualize and create data visualizations that are interactive. So if you're working on a presentation and if you want to present the campaign results to the company, or if you're doing some sort of a different presentation where you need visualization, utilize this, because you basically need to input different terms and the values, and then the system provides you with very cool visualization. So if you're looking to upgrade your slides game, that can be done. I should have used this tool for this slide. Now I thought of, because that could have, proved the case in point in this case. But definitely feel free to check it out. Very simple and straightforward to build those visualizations and then import them into your presentations. And finally, Google Web Designer is also a tool for expansion for display. It's a free tool that allows you to create interactive and engaging ads with also HTML5 integration. So if you're looking for banners that represent your brand full, and if you want to customize them and not use the ones that are created by the interface, although we do recommend that for performance. But from the brand perspective, Google Web Designer could be the tool to approach it, because it allows you to, again, very easily visualize and create moving HTML5 banner ads. Plus, since it's a Google tool, it also is able to automate different variations of different formats, so you don't need to create yourself the different sizes of the banners as well, because the tool helps you do that. So that's with expansion tools, and seeing that we're almost running out of time, I think we'll manage. The final tools for getting additional knowledge. So basically the training tools that I highly recommend to do that. We are doing this ourselves as Googlers. We have to every quarter go through different types of trainings just to make sure that our product knowledge and other things are up to the highest standard. And we do share some of those learnings ourselves within these tools as well. So the first one is called the Skill Shop. It used to be called the Academy for Ads. Basically, you can get more than 150 different courses for advertising on different Google platforms. So advertising apps, search campaigns, analyzing the information through Google Analytics as well. If you want to show accreditation or put it on your social media, or even prove that you know stuff when looking for a job, we also provide certifications that are available to show externally that you have mastered a given product as well. I think the key benefit is that it's learning at your own pace. For the courses, you'll also see the approximate amount of time that needs to take to complete it. So everything that you need to get in terms of the knowledge for advertising with Google is located in the Google Skill Shop tool. Again, free, no registration needed, just the Google account for logging in and saving the progress, but all sorts of advertising activities here. The next tool is a bit more related to overall digital education. So in case you're still new to the digital game overall, in case you want to improve there, or if you have relatives or family members or friends who could benefit from that, we have a tool called Digital Garage, where you have more than 130 courses on different digital topics with different levels of advancement for beginners who are just starting off using the amazing stuff that internet can give, to advanced users as well. All the courses are split into three categories: data and tech, digital marketing, where there might be a little bit of an overlap with Skillshop as well, but both of those tools complement each other. And thirdly, career development. So if you're looking for how to succeed in interviews and how to approach that, that's also a place to acquire the skill. Again, this is all learning at your own pace. So definitely try it out and recommend it to others in case they're looking to up their game and just get a bit more skill and experience with digital things. And finally, this also might be new, I would assume, to most people. I hope I pronounced it correctly. It's called Elevenses. It's basically a platform where you can find different types of recordings. And for more live streams, I noticed that um, there haven't been any recent ones. I think the last one was maybe the beginning of 2020 or end of 2019, but that actually doesn't change the relevance of this. Basically, a list of interactive episodes that cover, together with experts from Google and also external, so from client side, for instance, or different agencies, that cover a variety of different topics. A few to mention: how SMBs can succeed digitally. A few are very directly related to products. For example, I believe that there were a few episodes dedicated to app campaigns, search, and so on. So understanding and getting really the expert knowledge from the industries, that definitely makes sense to look through and see the topics that are of interest to you. It's not a continuous thing, so you can just choose different episodes in different series and go through them at your own pace as well. So if you're looking for data and insights or seasonal opportunities, that could be one of the key resources to up your knowledge as well. Finally, what I did here as well, and I'll jump into questions for a couple of minutes because we're out of time already. I added this tool, and I'm not sure because I saw that there was a question if we'll be able to share this or not. I think we'll clarify that, and if that's shareable, we'll probably post. It will be posted in the event page. But I added all of those tools in a nutshell with a theme to what it helps you uncover, the tool itself, and also the description of what it actually does. So if you're looking for a quick cheat sheet on what we covered, go through this, take it at your own pace, and see which tools you want to investigate in a bit more detail. Before I say goodbye, let me quickly show myself as well, and I'll see if there's any question that I haven't answered. So if the keywords are in another language, should that copy be in the same language as well, or would English copy work too? Ideally, it would be the ad copy would be in the same language, just for the better quality scores that determine how well the ad will be progressing, and just setting up the expectations of users as well. Of course, if you're in a crucial need of running that, and if there's no way for you to translate it properly, it is possible, but the recommended way would be to have the keywords matching the language of the ads as well. I believe there are no other questions left. So hopefully this was useful. Hopefully at least some of the tools were new, and I believe that there might have been at least a few, depending on your level of knowledge. But it's always a pleasure to share the insights and the experience that we have. So thank you for your time, and if we're running any future webinars as well, hopefully either myself or my colleagues will see you there. So enjoy the rest of your day and week, and thank you for the attention.